Okay, let's be real. Have you ever walked into a room and just completely blanked on why you're there? Or you lose your train of thought right in the middle of a sentence? For so many adults with ADHD, especially once you're over 40, these aren't just little oops moments. They are this frustrating daily thing that can really make you question your own mind. So today, we're going to dive into the biochemical reasons this happens, and more importantly, talk about a really targeted fix.
Just to give you a sense of how serious this can get, the source material tells a story about a patient, a guy in his mid-40s. And for him, the memory loss got so bad, it started to put his job, even his independence, at risk. I mean, can you imagine? He'd get ready to do a task, sit down at his computer, and the entire reason he was there would just poof, vanish. It was like living in a constant state of mental fog.
So, does that story hit a little too close to home for you? Forgetting names, what you talked about yesterday, where you put your keys. It's that constant, nagging feeling that your short-term memory is just failing you. Well, the good news is, you are not alone. And it's often not just some vague symptom of ADHD, but something much, much more specific that's going on under the hood.
Yeah, according to the research we're looking at today, a staggering 71% of these memory issues in adults with ADHD over 40, they're not some big, unsolvable mystery. Nope. They can actually be traced back to a very specific set of biological causes. So what in the world is actually happening inside our brains to create all this mental static?
I want you to think of your brain as this huge, sprawling, intricate city. And for that city to work right, all the buildings, the infrastructure, it all has to be strong. But for a lot of us, especially as we get older, the literal walls of our brain cells are starting to crumble. Let's break down exactly why that is. So our brain cells, the neurons, they have walls, and the actual bricks and mortar for those walls are two key amino acids, choline and serine. These two are absolutely essential for keeping the structure of your brain solid, right down to the cellular level.
And here's what that looks like. On the left, you've got a healthy neuron. See, the walls are strong, communication is lightning fast. But over on the right, when you're low on choline and serine, those walls start to break down. They get weak, and the communication between cells gets slow, unreliable. That's your brain fog. That's the memory glitch, right there.
And the problem actually gets deeper from here. Choline isn't just a building block for the walls. It's also the raw material for something called acetylcholine, and that is the brain's #1 neurotransmitter for storing memories. So the equation is simple. No choline means not enough acetylcholine, and that means your brain's ability to save new information is seriously, seriously compromised. So we've got crumbling walls and a pretty faulty messaging service. This brings us right back to our central mystery. What exactly is making up that 71%? Well, it turns out the answer isn't just one single thing.
It's actually a combination of a few key micronutrient deficiencies that are especially common in adults with ADHD over 40. The biggest pieces of the pie are, you guessed it, choline and serine. But right there with them are two other critical players, vitamin D, which helps make neurotransmitters, and zinc, which helps regulate them.
Now, here's why this matters so much. The source material is really clear that these specific deficiencies, especially in choline and serine, they're not just causing day-to-day frustration. They can actually be early warning signs, like a red flag for more serious cognitive decline down the road. We're talking things like dementia or Alzheimer's. So catching this early is critical. Okay, so that was the problem. It's biological, it's specific, and yeah, it's pretty serious. But the most important part of this whole explainer is that it's also manageable. So let's get right into the action plan for how you actually start rebuilding. The approach here is just incredibly logical. It's a simple 3-step process. First, you test, right? You can't fix what you don't measure. So targeted lab work can pinpoint your exact deficiencies. Second, you supplement. You give your brain the literal raw materials it's been missing. And third, you track your progress with a professional to make sure the whole rebuilding process is actually working. And the sources get super specific with their recommendations. For a serine deficiency, they suggest a form called phosphatidylserine, which is really easy for the brain to use, usually somewhere between 150 to 300 milligrams a day. For choline, it's a similar idea, a form called phosphatidylcholine, around 400 to 550 milligrams. And then for zinc, 15 to 30 milligrams a day, which usually depends on how low your levels are. Now, while those core nutrients are the big players in that 71%, they don't operate in a vacuum. Your brain is a super complex system, and there are a few other factors that play a huge supporting role in your cognitive health. Yeah, the sources also point out how important B vitamins are, especially B6 and B12, for energy and making neurotransmitters. Iron is crucial for getting oxygen to the brain. Your gut health, well, that's where a lot of these neurotransmitters are actually made. And your adrenal function, things like your cortisol levels, can have a massive impact on mental energy. See, it's all connected.
You know, if there's one thing you take away from all this, let it be this. If you are struggling with this kind of memory loss, it is not a flaw in your character. It is not a lack of effort. It is not a personal failing. More often than not, it is a physical, biochemical problem with the structure and chemistry of your brain, and it's a problem that actually has a solution.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought to chew on. We're so often told to just focus more or try harder. But what if the real answer isn't about willpower at all? What if it's about giving your brain the literal building blocks it needs to repair itself from the inside out? It's a really powerful shift from constantly fighting your brain to finally feeding it.